the court ruling. I agree with it 100%, that if impeachment motions, or any motion for that matter, must find its way on the order paper and therefore the floor of any of our houses, it must be strictly in accordance with the standing orders. In fact, that judge was helping the MCAs of Nairobi County Assembly, because if it had proceeded to the Senate and it had not been done according to the standing order, that would have been one primary reason why their impeachment proposal would have failed at the Senate. So the court is helping them. In fact, if the matter of Waititu had gone before a high court on how standing orders were disrespected in Kiambu, principally by the number of people who were in the House when they were deciding on Waititu's case, the fate would have been the same. So I want to laud the ruling by the High Court. Number two, and finally, the meeting by the President. The President should rethink. He allowed himself to misguide himself. He cannot find a constitutional organ called a county assembly discharging its role on a serious matter of corruption, where he has made his personal pronouncement that not even his own brother, his own sister, he would save him from the jaws of the fight against corruption if those people are corrupt. It is clear that he was trying to cushion the governor of Nairobi. That is unconstitutional. The President should rethink. He should allow the MCAs of Nairobi to exercise their constitutional mandate. He interfered, and in so doing, he has confirmed that the fight against corruption is selective. It is selective in the sense that when the fight is fingering Governor Sonko, who for whatever reason the President had to assist, he's supported. But when corruption is being fought and it's pointing at a helpless fellow like Rashid Echeza, Rashid has to go through what he is going through. We would like what is good for the politically correct to be also good for those who are politically not very correct. The issue of MCAs of Nairobi meeting the President is not acceptable under the 2010 Constitution of Kenya.
Kimani Matangi, did the President give the optics that is prevailing upon the MCAs to drop this particular impeachment motion?
No, I'm not so sure about that line of debate, Dibal, because one.
But what would be the rhyme or reason for him meeting with MCAs when this impeachment motion is ongoing?
Sure, let me make my point. One, as the leader of Jubilee Party, the President can meet his members or any members of any county assembly, and indeed, if they approached him on any matter like that for resolution, which is an alternative to either impeachment or any other process, he has a right to listen to those people. But
at State House,
at State House. Well, that's his office. But let me make this point that I believe that the process of impeachment in the County Assembly of Nairobi, if you follow from the events of since the new speaker came in, and the number of times that motion has been filed for impeachment, you read, in my view, more politics in the move than substance or content for the impeachment. I'm not trying to delve into the issues or the substance of the matters that are before court that face the governor, but just the processes in the assembly. That motion and has been running in your newspapers has been out there waiting to be tabled, sometimes fronted, not tabled, not tread out for so long, and including, if you remember our last comments here, that it's gone to a point whereby you find it's sometimes used as a bargaining tool, either or tools of ransom, sometimes against even a governor, either to get means, to get money, or anything. And so you might want to ask yourself, and this is one issue that this country must address after the dust has settled on all the issues that are there about impeachment and corruption in county assemblies and in county governments. Because indeed, the Senate in our last session one of the senators had proposed an impeachment bill, an act, which was discussed, which was almost going to pass. So that one, we can make this process neat and clean to deal with matters of threshold, to deal with matters of substance, to deal with matters of procedure, such that when it has been made clear, after, which is, by the way, the role of the county assembly anyway, after it has become evident that a governor must face that action, then it has got to be done neatly, clearly, with precision and accurateness. So what we need to do, and this would be my final comment on this, is to ensure that we clean up this process of politics. Then you find it would be meaningful that when you hear a governor was brought before the Senate because they were impeached, then you will know that this is a man who is facing real charges at their county. So it would be very difficult actually to ask any man on the streets right now, with all that has been going on in Nairobi, why don't you have this process on the table? What should be the way forward? Politics has already marred it. I believe it is time to clean up this thing and ensure that impeachments happen because they have to happen and because governors are corrupt.
Right. But was the takeover still an illegality, as it is as far as the Constitution is concerned? Because I think also Majority Leader had raised that particular query regarding how it was done. There was no public participation according to Article 10 of the Constitution. So if we focus on Article 10 of the Constitution, was this process an illegality, which is bound to be challenged in the court?
I think we are facing two things here. We are facing legality and politics. You know, politics and legality, sometimes when you live in a patronage system like ours, it gets blurred. The difference gets blurred. You can't quite get the difference.
But that should not be the case.
It should not be the case. Yeah, but I'm saying because we live in a patronage system.
So abide by the Constitution, I
was going to expound further. What happened, you know, Sonko is a very unconventional populist kind of politician. And he has always known how to play the carrot and stick kind of politics. So to deal with Sonko, you cannot just use legality alone. You have to have some other means. So what happened here was, he was told, you are not handling the county well, so you'll be impeached or give up some functions. So he gave up some functions, so the impeachment goes. It's just politics. Because he gave up some functions, now the impeachment is shelved.
Is that the sacred cows that Bonne is talking about?
Now conveniently using legality. But I think that we should start from where the rain started beating Nairobi. In the first place, why was Sonko allowed to stand as governor in the first place?
All right, let's leave it at that. Let's leave it at that. Just a moment, Otiende.
Three things to be said. First, I had hoped that the Jubilee members of the panel might know things we don't know. But it is clear that they are also at the same level with us. So we can safely talk about
maybe the editorial with the truth today.
But first is the process.
I think you enjoy more the right of reply than being proactive.
You know, the county assembly of Nairobi is a legislature. And in principle, the judiciary must always be very cautious in interfering with the legislative processes, including impeachment. Because if it does too much, even if it was now a question of the presidency and the people were to consider this through the parliament, then you could have a situation where the judiciary would curtail such a situation. So I think it should have a cautious intervention. That said, to the extent of what the papers are quoting, that there were serious process issues, then you would not fault the judiciary for that. Because the process in an impeachment is also usually as important as the outcome, whether it succeeds or it does not succeed. And to that extent, it's just as important as the other process of takeover of functions of the county. So that brings me to the second question. That takeover, was it lawful? The truth is, under the Constitution, you'd say yes, but there are two fundamental questions that must be answered. If you have stopped the governor, as the courts have stopped the governor from executing the functions of his office as interpreted, can he execute that function to the extent of transferring them? That's a very serious legal question which I think remains. The second question is, when you say the county can transfer functions, who is the county? Is it just the governor? Because in the constitution, the county comprises of the county executive, which includes the governor, his deputy, the CECs, and the county assembly. So to the extent that it's not evident that the county assembly was involved in advance, and in fact, if you look at the Intergovernmental Relations Act, such a transfer is contemplated to involve more than the county assembly. It even involves parliament, because the transfer can be a very fundamental issue. It can be an issue where you can elect a governor, and then the next day they transfer all the functions to the national government. Then what does that do to the people? So there are process issues also in terms of that transfer, even though in principle it is allowed. And I think that those who manage these things should always be very careful, even when advising the president, including, I saw during the transfer, no less a person than the Speaker of the Senate was witnessing it. And yet, if an issue properly arises, it is the Senate that ought to make that decision. So those who manage these things, it's not just about the outcome. It's about the process. Lastly, the invitation of the MCAs to State House.
Yes.
I am not aware of anything in the standing orders that would stop that. Because any leader of the party, and this happens even with us in the National Assembly, even in the Senate, from time to time would always call members of that party to have discussion. So if the president, as the leader of Jubilee, thought that there were things that they needed to discuss as Jubilee, there is nothing by itself wrong with that. In any event, it is assumed that no matter what you say in a Kamukunji, in State House, whatever, as an MCA who swore to uphold the Constitution, you should still be able to exercise your discretion according to the Constitution, not merely because you've been invited. But I suspect that there's a fundamental issue here. I suspect that the more fundamental issue is the fear that the impeachment could actually succeed and what, therefore, it would mean. In the case of Kiambu and elsewhere, where the impeachment succeeds, the deputy takes over and all that. But in Nairobi, without a deputy, it means we would be looking possibly at fresh elections. And I suspect that a lot of people, especially including in government, might not want the prospect of a fresh election for the governor and the deputy governor of Nairobi right now. And I think that's a fundamental issue. However, I think that at the end of the day, depending on handling the process properly, depending on handling the questions properly, the County Assembly of Nairobi still ought to be allowed eventually to exercise its discretion whether the impeachment fails or not, but it should fail or succeed on the floor of the County Assembly, not outside.
So we have a check on the Intergovernmental Relations Act. We have a check also on Article 187 of the Constitution. What about the check on the Article 10 of the Constitution?
That, of course, is, you had already mentioned that, and a lot of people mentioned that in terms of public participation, because the people who voted in Nairobi voted a governor, and they voted that they would have a county government. When you are now transferring some of those functions, especially the fundamental ones, they ought to have at least some say. I think most people probably think that it was a good thing, but they ought to have the opportunity to say it first before it's done, not after it is done.
So question about Governor Sonko as a governor himself, and him now representing the county as it is, and there is a court case, and he's been barred to actually act in office. He raises very serious questions about the credibility of the whole process as it is right now. I don't know how will you chime in. I think it's Jacoy. It's Jacoy, then it's Jacoy video.
Yeah, Debal, of all these people, I'm the one who has been a whip. I'm the one who has been a deputy minority leader. There is nothing wrong Uhuru did by calling MCAs. That is what people are supposed to do when you are on top, just like Otiende has said it. Remember recently we were facing Trump impeachment. Did you see Republicans, maybe with the exception of Mitt Romney, say anything wrong? In fact, he kept quiet because the whip had spoken. You know, if you go to the House of Commons, if there's a vote in the House, the whip even has the powers to call the Prime Minister to come back and vote, because you must physically cast your vote. So who is the bigger whip here in the country? In fact, even in the sense of the handshake, it is Uhuru. Raila has no powers, but it is Uhuru. Before, what we used to do in Parliament is, when there is an issue coming, we would call meetings and agree on which way. And that is why, when I was the whip, once I speak, nobody from my side can contradict. That is how the whip works. But the more recent one is this Donald Trump thing I'm telling you, that the Republican Party has spoken. Here is a case of a rogue MCA who brings a private motion. It is not a party motion. This is a private member's motion. So the party can tell him, no, in any case, the MCA is even an ODM MCA. It's not even a Jubilee MCA. You see, what Wamatangi is saying, which I totally agree with, is let us bring sanity to our politics. I even spoke to some of the ODM MPs, MCAs. I told them, no, that is not how you do legislation. Otiende has at least addressed the legalities. But lastly, this guy is charged in court. What if the court finds him innocent? You know, the Senate must help us. What if Sonko is found innocent sometime in the future? Then what do you do? Because I had said here at the back that Uhuru Kenyatta must give Kenyans a solution about Nairobi. And that is why we are trying to put Nairobi under the national government. But you cannot have a Nairobi where Sonko refused to appoint a deputy, where the MCAs want to kick him out. Then what are you left with? What are you left with? I shouted here many times that the president must give us a solution. And I knew the constitution existed. But after he gives a solution, we can only criticize the solution. But when you say it's wrong, and we now do have a solution, let us deal with the solution as it were. At least Nairobi has avoided some vacuum. But you can't say the assembly, parliament, must do its work. No, they are not above the law. Everything is done within the existence of some supreme leader. And I can tell you, I've followed this Trump thing so carefully. And everybody knew the result before. Everybody knew the result. And I have spoken to some of these people. They don't even know what is before them. They don't even know that there will be such a big vacuum in Nairobi. So we are dealing with the first, and the Kiambu one was easier because Nyoro was there. But this one, there's nothing.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Right. We need to be winding up. Kimani Matangi.
Adibal, just maybe a comment or two on that last question you asked. So where are we? What would be the way forward? And I believe, drawing from what Jacoyo said, that the Senate needs to help us. I think the judiciary should help us more also, because given the fact that if you remember now, arising from all those bail conditions that have been imposed on the accused governors, and then the confusion that has ensued, if you reflect, and maybe you can find it if you go online, and you look at the Supreme Court's opinion on after the Governor Wambora case during his impeachment, the Supreme Court made some observations which are very interesting, even to remember now. They said that in the process of impeachment, courts must be very reluctant to interfere, because it is deemed that the impeachment process is is a political punishment process. It is the way you punish politicians for not, living true to the expectations, having risen to those positions through politics. And so you find that division is there. Then remember again the recent ruling that was made when the governor for Kiambu during his impeachment process, when he appealed to the appellate court. And they said that though he had come to court seeking relief, the magistrate in his original ruling did not seek to remove him from office. And so even at that point, he was still the governor of Kiambu. At that point, that he was still having all the privileges, including receiving all his salaries, and by implication, and maybe that's one of the areas one would want to wade into and find out. For example, is it the reason why, even when Governor Sonko's appointment of a deputy was challenged in court, is it why the court kind of gave an ambiguous ruling and approach to this, such that they would not determine precisely that he has made a mistake by appointing a deputy? So what I'm saying, I was trying to respond to what Jacob was saying, is I believe the judiciary can help us more. Such that we don't have this ambiguous and a cocktail of a scenario whereby we as citizens want to obey court orders. But then the process itself and the court orders and rulings and opinions seem so contradictory to the process and opposing to each other, such that you don't know what is right to do when a governor is facing such charges. At the point of imposing bail, the courts must be very clear by saying that these are the bail terms, but this does not remove you from a governor, so you can do this, but you cannot do that. And if the idea is to protect witnesses, they would have to specify all witnesses, for example, who are either material or useful to this case. Because the fundamental question is, and I heard it being asked by a lawyer sometimes, when you tell a governor that you should not access your office, does that ruling mean that the boundaries of the office have expanded to be the boundaries of the county? Such that if you find the governor of Nairobi carrying out some duties in Dandora, that you say he has contradicted the bill terms, and what the ruling was, the bill terms were that he should not access his office. Do the boundaries of his office equal to the boundaries of the county? I think these are issues that the courts must help us to resolve. Yeah.
Thank you.
Functionally, much as the president might try to save Sonko through whatever he's trying to do, functionally, the county government of Nairobi is as good as dissolved. I think Kenyans must know that the functions that are now remaining with Sonko, even as they try to save him, are as follows. It is liquor licensing, ECD education, air pollution, and pornography. That's all. That's all I'm telling you.
Pornography control.
Yes, control of pornography.
Yeah, it's important to mention that.
Control of pornography. So unless Sonko was elected as the governor of Koinange Street, he might as well do the honorable thing, i.e., actually resign as the governor of Nairobi. They have taken away all the functions.
All right.
I want to conclude by lauding my brother Otiende for what he said about what it means. It is true that the national values and the principle of governance of this country, they bind all state organs and all state officers.
Yes.
So when the deed of transfer is signed between the county government of Nairobi and the national government, the constitution was contemplating the two governments to sign. What we witnessed was not the two governments signing that deed. The deed was signed without consultation of either within the national government or consultations within the county government, and it was signed by the Minister for Devolution and the Governor of Nairobi in the presence of the President, the Attorney General of Kenya, and the Speaker. I can assure you, and I don't think I'm wrong, if this matter will be taken to the High Court for determination, they're going to find that the deed of transfer was signed by the wrong people. To my understanding, it should have been signed by Sonko in the presence of the county attorney and signed by the president on behalf of the national government in the presence of the Attorney General of Kenya. The minister called Wamalwa was signing that deed of transfer as who? Because there are many functions, health, finance, and what have you, that were transferred. And those functions are not under the docket of the Ministry of Devolution. They are under different ministries. So the person who signs for all the ministries in Kenya is the President of Kenya.
All right. Maybe as we're winding up on it as well, does it also bring to bear the bill that I think has been sponsored also by Aaron Cheriot, who's away, on the metropolis? And I think that this, making Nairobi County as, you know, to be a metropolis, this was also, I think it began with Senator Kemi Gitura of Murang'a then. Yes. Are we likely to see a scenario where if there is this takeover then, why can't we just have Nairobi County as a metropolis as it was so, you know, envisaged from that particular bill?
It's already there.
It's already there?
The BBI proposals to disengage Nairobi as a county and make it a standalone metropolis. And that was actually the original proposal, even in the harmonized draft constitution.
But that is a long end of a stick. We have a prime solution here with the bills already in house.
I'm telling you that you cannot do that without amending the constitution, because the constitution makes Nairobi a county like the others. There is no shortcut to this. But since we are winding up, I think that it is clear that there was some mistake made in the process of this takeover of Nairobi. And while it's important to be very careful, perhaps it's not too late. It can still be ratified, what we call ex post facto. It ought to have been done well. It wasn't, but it can still go through those processes.
Ex post facto?
Yes.
I need to write that as a new one for me. I like it. Okay.
Anyway, since now we are winding up,
that means
I thought
after the fact.
Yes, I thought I would comment on this coronavirus thing. Just this morning, I saw that Cameroon now had recorded its first case, I think, of a Frenchman who had traveled from France. The other week it was Nigeria, an Italian, and before that we had a case in Algeria and in Egypt. And while we thank God that so far we've not recorded any case, and we hope it remains that way, I am starting to wonder the trajectory of this coronavirus. I am yet to hear of any black who has contracted it. Maybe the doctors here would advise us. Is there a genetic pattern, or it's by sheer coincidence and at the mercy of the Lord that we have not gone that way? I would really love to know that.
That the strain of the virus has not really affected the black man.
That one, you know, medical science has a way that it operates. So it would be unwise for me to say that blacks are resistant, because we don't have the evidence. We don't have the unequivocal evidence that actually blacks are resistant. So I would urge that whatever precautions we are taking as a nation, we continue taking those precautions, because we cannot sit back and think that blacks are resistant and then we end up with a pandemic. We'll be unable to handle it if it came into on a large scale. So I would rather we await the team that has been set up, and I have a lot of confidence in the new Minister for Health. The bit I've heard him speaking, he appears to have his hands on, and we expect proper response.
We need to wind up.
We need to stop the Chinese planes from landing here, and we need to, you know, about this morning before I came here, I saw on CNN that 6 people have died in the US and 80 people are infected. So if Americans are dying with all their medical advancements, we cannot be careless about this. I have a lot of faith in my friend Butai. Please take it serious. I even came through the airports yesterday. These people are too casual. They're too casual.
Thank you.
I think it's going to be a disaster.
I'll wind up again on the coronavirus. Yeah. The court made a serious ruling that those 239 passengers should be rounded up and be taken to the quarantine at a military base. The minister, and I don't know why you guys are being nice to Mutahi Kagwe all of a sudden. Or is it because he was a panelist like us?
No,
we must put pressure under Mutahi Kagwe to tell the country whether those 239 people have since been rounded up.
Thank you.
And are they at the best?
Right.
This thing of saying that people should go under self-quarantine, it is like you are requesting them to do us a favor. Quarantine means arrest.
Thank you.
And confinement.
Thank you, thank you. Mutahi Kagwe should come back on the panel and maybe also clarify this.
Ndibala,
Kimani Watangi,
yes,
finally.
The question I would want to ask maybe is it that we don't have any cases yet, or is it that we don't have any cases reported? You know, that there's a clear distinction. You know, remember during HIV epidemic, it took Kenya almost 10 years after the first cases were reported in the Western world for the first cases to be reported here in Kenya. But when we started reporting big time. Because we sat on it, it incubated, it infected people and spread wild. And by the time we were reporting and showing images of villages that were empty when people had died all over. And that's what we should be asking ourselves. Allow me just to say to make one last
We're winding up
on this question, because I didn't want the question of Nairobi to go away without me making a comment. Because I believe, in my view, that proposal to make Nairobi a metropolis would have been handled in a better way if the approach of national government is to capacitate Nairobi, devolve and disburse more funds, capacity build, assist the county to stand on its feet. At this time, when we are barely 10 years into devolution, if we start taking up counties and then handing power to national government,
thank you.
Then we might lose more counties. We risk losing more counties.
Thank you, Matangi.
Yeah.
Right. So.